The stars looked different from the command deck of the Atlas, humanity's flagship vessel. Commander Jack Reed stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as thousands of warships moved into formation around his own. Their metal hulls gleamed under the light of Sol, Earth's sun growing smaller in the distance as the greatest armada in galactic history prepared to leave humanity's home system. "Status report," Jack said, his voice calm despite the weight of what they were about to do. Officer Dan Phillips looked up from his console. "All ships reporting ready, sir. Formation is at 98% completion. The last battle group will be in position within 10 minutes. Jack nodded. 900,000 warships. The number still seemed unreal, even to him. For 200 years, humanity had built this fleet in secret, hidden in the shadows of gas giants, concealed in asteroid belts, and constructed in underground facilities across a dozen worlds. While the rest of the galaxy thought humans were barely managing to survive after the scorching of Earth, they had instead been preparing. "Message from Central Command, sir," called out Communications Officer Beth Ward. "The final authorization codes have been transmitted. Operation Silent Shield is officially underway." Jack took a deep breath. "Acknowledge receipt and inform all captains. We launch in 30 minutes." The command deck fell quiet as officers carried out their duties with practiced efficiency. These men and women had trained their entire lives for this moment. Some had never even set foot on Earth, born and raised on secret military stations where everything, from their education to their meals, prepared them for this mission. "Sir?" Beth's voice broke the silence, tension evident in her tone. "We're receiving transmissions from everywhere." Jack turned to her. "Explain." "Multiple species, sir. The Krell, the Duran hierarchy, even the Galactic Council itself. They're all sending diplomatic packets. Some are offering peace treaties, others military alliance. A few are simply begging." Jack walked to her station and looked at the screen filled with incoming transmission notices. "They've noticed us, then?" "Yes, sir. And they seem scared." "Good," said a new voice from the doorway. Director Emma Cole, Earth's representative to the fleet, entered the command deck. Her gray uniform bore no military insignia, but everyone knew her authority exceeded even Jack's. "Let them be afraid for once." Jack turned to her. "Director Cole, welcome aboard the Atlas." Emma nodded, her eyes scanning the various displays showing the massive fleet. "After what they did to Earth, fear is the least they deserve." 73. Years ago, the Galactic Council had deemed humanity too dangerous to leave unchecked. Without warning, alien warships had appeared in Earth's orbit, using devastating weapons to burn major cities, killing billions in what became known as the scorching. The surviving humans were expected to limp along as a broken species, perhaps surviving but never again threatening the established order of the galaxy. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They had left humans alive. "We're picking up scout vessels at the edge of the system," reported Sensor Officer Tom Blake. "At least 30 different species trying to observe us. They're keeping their distance." "Let them watch," Emma said. "Let them report back what they're seeing. Let their leaders know that humanity is not just surviving. We're coming." Jack returned to the main viewport, where the endless line of warships stretched out before him. From massive dreadnoughts to agile destroyers, the fleet represented the single largest military force ever assembled. Each ship carried weapons that could level cities, and together they could reduce entire planets to ash. But that wasn't the plan. Not yet, anyway. "Message from General West's battle group," Beth announced. "They're in position and awaiting final orders." "The same for Admiral Jones and Commander Lee," added Dan. "All 3 battle groups report ready." Jack nodded. "Director, would you like to address the fleet before we depart?" Emma stepped forward to the communications station. Beth quickly set up a channel that would broadcast to all 900,000 ships simultaneously. Emma took a moment to compose herself before beginning. "Men and women of Earth's fleet, this is Director Emma Cole. Today we emerge from the shadows. For too long we have hidden our strength, building in secret while the galaxy believed us broken. They burned our cities. They slaughtered our families. They expected us to cower, to fade away, to accept our place as a footnote in galactic history. She paused, her eyes hard as stone. Today, we show them how wrong they were. Today, 900,000 ships crewed by the children of Earth will launch into the stars. We do not seek to conquer. We do not seek to destroy. We seek only what was denied to us, our rightful place among the stars, our security against those who would harm us, and justice for those we lost. Throughout the fleet, in cramped crew quarters and spacious command decks alike, humans listened in solemn silence. Each of you carries the hopes of humanity with you. Each of you represents our refusal to be extinguished. Remember your training. Remember your duty. And most importantly, remember Earth. Emma nodded to Beth, who ended the transmission. Outside, the Atlas, engines across the vast fleet began to glow with blue light. The first ships, the vanguard of destroyers and scout vessels, began to move outward, their formations precise and their movements coordinated with a level of military discipline that would send chills down the spines of those watching. All systems green, Dan reported. Fleet movement exactly on schedule. On a small moon orbiting Jupiter, a three-eyed alien observer watched through advanced optics as the human fleet began its departure. Its hands trembled as it sent an urgent message back to its homeworld. The rumors were true, it transmitted. Humans have built, I cannot even describe it, an armada unlike anything we have ever seen, and they're leaving their system. All vessels are advised to clear any potential path. Do not, I repeat, do not engage. Similar messages raced across the galaxy, from Scout to Homeworld, from Homeworld to Allies, from Allies to the Galactic Council itself. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive now scrambled their own fleets, not to fight, but to retreat. The once mighty Duran hierarchy, responsible for coordinating the attack on Earth, decades ago sent a simple message to all its worlds: evacuate border colonies immediately. As the human fleet passed the orbit of Neptune, Jack looked at a small screen showing Earth, now just a pale blue dot in the distance. We're receiving a final message from Earth Command, Beth said quietly. It simply says, remember, but be better. Jack nodded slowly. Acknowledge receipt. The bridge fell silent again as the Atlas and its escorts accelerated toward the heliopause, the boundary where the solar system ended and interstellar space began. Behind them, the rest of the fleet followed in perfect formation, a display of power and precision that no species could ignore. 900,000 warships, built in secret by a species that should have been broken, now launched into the galaxy, and the galaxy, for the first time in recorded history, was silent with fear. 3 weeks after leaving Earth's solar system, the human fleet divided into 3 massive battle groups. Each group contained 300,000 warships, a force that alone would have outmatched any single species in the known galaxy. The separation occurred with mathematical precision, ships breaking formation only to smoothly transition into new ones, like a dance practiced for years. Admiral Bill Thomas commanded Battle Group Alpha, tasked with approaching the core worlds of the Stellar Coalition, the loose alliance of species that had once supported the attack on Earth. His flagship, the Horizon, led from the center of the formation as they entered the Orion Spur. Any response to our approach? Bill asked, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the tension filling the bridge. Communications Officer Gina Miller shook her head. Nothing direct, sir. We're picking up increased chatter between their worlds, but they're avoiding official contact. They're scared, said Diplomatic Officer Paul Green, studying data on his tablet. Intelligence suggests they've evacuated 3 border systems already. They're pulling back their civilians. Bill nodded slowly. He was 62 years old, one of the few senior officers who actually remembered Earth before the scorching. He had been just a boy when the alien ships appeared in the sky and rained fire down on his hometown. That memory fueled him through military academy and his rise through the ranks. They should be scared, he said quietly. But fear without understanding won't serve our purpose. Across the bridge, Officer Ryan Webb monitored the scanners. "Sir, we've got movement. A small group of ships has broken from the Praxis station ahead. 5 vessels approaching slowly." "Weapon status?" Bill asked immediately. "Passive, sir. Their weapon systems are powered down. Looks like a diplomatic vessel with escorts." Bill exchanged glances with Paul. This was unexpected. The Stellar Coalition had been radio silent since the human fleet's departure from Sol. "They're hailing us, Admiral," Gina reported, surprise evident in her voice. "On screen," Bill ordered. The main display flickered to life, showing an alien, with pale blue skin and large expressive eyes. A Talarian, one of the more moderate species in the Coalition. "This is Ambassador Lore of the Stellar Coalition," the alien said, its translator converting its musical language to English. "I request permission to come aboard your vessel for direct talks." Bill's expression didn't change. "Ambassador, this is Admiral Thomas of Earth Fleet's Battle Group Alpha. Why should we grant your request when your coalition participated in the attack on our homeworld?" The alien's eyes lowered slightly, a gesture of shame in their culture. "The coalition made a terrible mistake 73 years ago. We followed the Council's lead without questioning their judgment. Many of us have regretted that decision for decades." "Regret doesn't rebuild cities or bring back the dead," Bill replied coldly. "No," Lore agreed. "It does not. But perhaps dialogue can prevent more cities from falling and more people, yours and ours, from dying." In the engine room of the Horizon, Chief Engineer Matt Wilson was elbow-deep in the ship's propulsion system when his assistant brought him the news about the diplomatic vessel. "They actually want to talk?" Matt asked, wiping grease from his hands. "After all this time?" "That's what I heard," replied his assistant. "They're saying the coalition has known about our fleet for months." Matt frowned. "That's impossible. We maintained complete communications blackout during construction. How could they know? No idea, but they didn't do anything about it. Just watched and waited." This troubled Matt deeply. As one of the engineers who had helped design the stealth systems for the human fleet, he took pride in their invisibility. If the aliens had known all along— "I need to check something," he said, hurrying to his workstation. He pulled up schematics of the alien surveillance network that Earth intelligence had mapped over the years. If there was a hole in their security, he needed to find it. 2 hours later, Ambassador Lore stood in the Horizon's conference room, surrounded by human officers. The contrast was striking. The tall, willowy alien with its flowing diplomatic robes facing humans in crisp military uniforms, their faces showing little emotion. "We detected your shipbuilding activities approximately 18 months ago," Lore explained, projecting a star chart showing human construction sites. "Our long-range probes identified unusual resource movements and energy signatures." "And you did nothing?" asked Bill, skepticism clear in his voice. "What could we do?" Lore's large eyes blinked slowly. "By the time we realized the scale of what humanity was building, it was already too late. Any aggressive action would have only triggered an immediate response from your forces." Paul stepped forward. "You could have informed the Galactic Council. They certainly would have attempted another attack." Lore's skin rippled slightly, a sign of discomfort. "Many in the Coalition opposed the first attack on Earth. We were overruled. The Council insisted humans were too unpredictable, too aggressive, to be allowed to develop further." "And now?" Bill asked. "Now, we see what happens when you corner a species and leave them no choice but to become exactly what you feared." Lore gestured to the viewport, where thousands of human warships were visible. "The Coalition wishes to negotiate a separate peace with humanity, independent of the Council's position." Back in his engine room, Matt had made a disturbing discovery. Pulling up communication records from alien satellites near one of their secret shipyards, he found evidence of regular surveillance. The aliens had indeed been watching them, but the strange thing was what they did with that information. Nothing. No alerts. No military buildups. Just observation. Matt immediately called. "The bridge. Admiral, I found something you need to see." While Matt shared his findings with Ship Command, Battle Groups Beta and Gamma were making their own first contacts across the galaxy. Battle Group Beta, commanded by Admiral Jane Foster, approached the Duran hierarchy's territory, the species that had led the attack on Earth. Unlike Battle Group Alpha's experience, they encountered no diplomatic vessels. The Durans were running. "They've abandoned another colony, Admiral," reported her second-in-command. "That's the fourth one. They're creating a buffer zone between us and their core worlds." Jane studied the tactical display showing Duran ships in full retreat. "They think we're here for revenge, aren't we?" asked her officer quietly. Jane gave him a measured look. "We're here for justice and security. Revenge would make us no better than them." Meanwhile, Battle Group Gamma held position at Crossroads Station, a major trading hub where three galactic arms met. The station, normally bustling with ships from dozens of species, now floated in near emptiness, most traders having fled at news of the human approach. Commander Roy Clark watched from his flagship as a handful of brave or desperate merchants continued their business. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the station itself." The message was simple. "The Galactic Council requests humanity's presence at an emergency session. For the first time in Council history, Earth is invited to send representatives." Back on the horizon, Ambassador Lore had finished presenting the Coalition's proposal for peace when Matt's findings were brought to Bill's attention. "Your people knew about our fleet, watched us build it, and chose not to act," Bill said, studying the evidence. "Why?" Lore's posture changed, showing what might have been resignation. "Because many of us believed we deserved whatever was coming. The attack on Earth was unconscionable. Some species in the Coalition viewed it as necessary, but others saw it as an atrocity. So you just waited for us to come for you?" "We waited to see what humans would do with such power," Lore replied. "The Council believed your kind would use it for destruction and conquest as they would have done. We hoped otherwise." Bill leaned forward. "And now that we're here, now that you see 900,000 warships at your doorstep, what do you believe now?" Lore's large eyes fixed on Bill's. "I believe that if destruction was your goal, we would already be dead. The fact that you're willing to talk gives many of us hope that perhaps the Council was wrong about humanity all along." As this conversation unfolded across all three battle groups, humans maintained their disciplined formations, their weapons ready but not active, their posture defensive rather than aggressive. The galaxy watched in tense silence, waiting to see what humanity would do with its overwhelming force. And in that silence was fear, but also for the first time, a glimmer of respect. The Galactic Council chamber had never seen a human before. Located on a massive space station at the center of the galaxy, the ancient hall had hosted representatives from thousands of species over its 10,000-year history. Today, for the first time, 3 humans stood before the curved table where the 7 elder species sat in judgment over galactic affairs. Director Emma Cole led the small human delegation, flanked by diplomatic advisor Sam Harris and military attaché Colonel Frank Moore. They stood tall, their simple gray uniforms a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and ornamental armor worn by the other species present. "The Council recognizes the representatives of Earth," announced the Council leader, a Varaxi with translucent skin that barely concealed the complex network of glowing veins beneath. The hesitation before saying Earth was slight but noticeable. Emma stepped forward. "The people of Earth acknowledge the Council's recognition," she replied, following the ancient protocol perfectly, much to the surprise of the assembled delegates. Humanity had been studying the Council for decades, learning everything they could about the body that had ordered their near extinction. "We are gathered to address the unprecedented military mobilization of the human species," the Varaxi continued. 900,000 warships now travel through Council space without authorization, causing widespread concern among peaceful civilizations. Emma's face remained impassive. "Interesting. When your ships entered Earth space 73 years ago to burn our cities, I don't recall you seeking authorization." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Such direct speech was rarely heard in council proceedings. That action was a defensive measure, stated a Krell representative, its metal exoskeleton clicking as it spoke. The council determined that human expansion posed an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Based on what evidence? Emma demanded. Your history, the Krell replied. No other species has fought so many wars against itself. No other species advanced from primitive flight to space travel in less than a century. The trajectory was clear. Sam Harris stepped forward. So you punished us not for actions we had taken, but for actions you feared we might take. Meanwhile, several light years away, Lieutenant Lisa Chen moved silently through the maintenance corridors of Council Outpost Station 17. While the official human delegation attended the council meeting, Lisa had a different mission altogether. Dressed in the environmental suit of a station worker, she bypassed security systems with equipment specifically designed for this purpose. Earth intelligence had spent decades collecting data on council security protocols, and now that knowledge was being put to use. Lisa reached a data terminal and connected a small device to its access port. I'm in, she whispered into her communicator. Beginning download. Back at the council chamber, the debate continued with increasing tension. The fact remains, said a Duran representative, that humanity has built the largest military force seen in the galaxy's modern era. How are we to interpret this as anything but a threat? Colonel Moore spoke for the first time. The same way, we were expected to interpret your unprovoked attack, as a matter of security. The Varaxi Council leader raised a slender hand for silence. Perhaps we can address specific concerns. Will humanity agree to limitations on its fleet movements? Perhaps a gradual disarmament process? No, Emma said simply. The chamber fell silent. No negotiations about the size or movement of our fleet, she continued. Those are non-starters. We are here to establish new terms for humanity's place in the galaxy, not to surrender our only guarantee of safety. Then what do you propose? Asked the Varaxi. First, formal acknowledgement that the attack on Earth was unjustified. Second, reparations for the billions of lives lost. Third, recognition of all human-controlled space and colonies as sovereign territory, with guarantees against future aggression. The council members looked at each other in disbelief. These were not the terms of a species seeking compromise. These were demands backed by overwhelming force. On Outpost Station 17, Lisa had downloaded terabytes of classified council data when an alarm suddenly blared. Security alert. Unauthorized access in Section 12D-B, announced the station's AI. Lisa quickly disconnected her device and placed it in a hidden compartment of her suit. She had what she came for. Now she just needed to escape. Two security officers rounded the corner ahead, tall tentacled Jaran known for their loyalty to the council. Lisa ducked into a maintenance shaft, using the station schematics memorized during her mission prep. She wasn't just an infiltration specialist, she was one of the few humans who had extensively studied Jaran physiology. She knew they could detect heat signatures but had poor vision in the blue light spectrum. Activating a small device on her belt, Lisa created a heat signature that moved in the opposite direction while her suit switched to emit only blue spectrum light. The Jarans followed the decoy, allowing her to make her way toward the extraction point. As the council meeting continued, the human battle groups maintained their positions across the galaxy. Battle Group Alpha remained near the Stellar Coalition worlds. Battle Group Beta kept the Duran hierarchy contained within their own space, and Battle Group Gamma held the strategically crucial crossroads position. Admiral Bill Thomas received an encoded transmission from the Horizon's communications officer. Sir, we've just received intelligence from Operation Looking Glass. Lieutenant Chen's mission was successful. Bill reviewed the summary of findings on a secure tablet, his expression growing grimmer with each swipe of his finger. Send this to Director Cole immediately. Priority channel. In the council chamber, Emma's secure communicator vibrated silently against her wrist. She glanced down at it briefly, then returned her attention to the council with a new coldness in her eyes. Before we continue these discussions, she said, interrupting a Krell representative mid-sentence, I'd like to ask about Project Containment. The chamber went completely still. Even the environmental system seemed to quiet. I don't know what you're referring to, the Varaxi Council leader said after a moment too long. Emma smiled without warmth. Strange. According to the files we've just acquired from your secure database, Project Containment was the code name for a plan developed not 73 years ago, but nearly 150 years ago, long before we had achieved significant space travel. She touched her tablet, and holographic images appeared above the center of the chamber. Council documents marked with the highest security classifications. These files show that the Council identified Earth as a potential disruption source during our early industrial age. You've been watching us for centuries, planning how to keep us contained. Sam stepped forward, continuing the presentation. The scorching wasn't a response to any immediate threat. It was simply the implementation of a long-standing plan to ensure that humans never joined the galactic community as equals. The council chamber erupted in shouted denials and demands to know how humans had accessed classified information. Several species representatives hurriedly left the chamber, presumably to check what other secrets might have been compromised. In the chaos, Frank leaned close to Emma. Chen's data also shows something else. Not all species supported Project E. Containment. There was significant opposition, especially from the older races. Emma nodded slightly. This aligned with what they had suspected. The council was not as unified as it appeared. When the Varaxi finally restored order, the council leaders' skin had darkened with what humans had learned was their version of anger or distress. These accusations are serious, the Varaxi said, and the manner in which you obtained this information is a clear violation of council security. Were we expected to ask politely why you tried to exterminate us? Colonel Moore asked, his military bearing never faltering. A new voice spoke up. One of the ancient Morrigan species rarely active in council politics anymore. Perhaps, the wizened creature said, it is time for truth. The young races feared what humans might become. Some of us older species remembered when we were feared for similar reasons. The chamber fell silent again as the ancient being continued. The council was wrong to attack Earth. I said so at the time, as did others, but we were overruled. Now we face the very outcome we sought to prevent, a militarized human species with both the power and the motivation to reshape the galaxy. Emma looked directly at the Morrigan representative. Yet here we stand, talking instead of firing weapons. Perhaps you misjudged not just our potential for violence but our capacity for peace as well. Around the galaxy, as news of the confrontation at the council spread, dozens of species that had remained neutral began reaching out to human commanders. Some offered support, others requested protection, and a few even suggested alliances. The galaxy was realigning itself around the new reality. Humanity was not just a survivor of attempted genocide. It was now a power that could no longer be ignored. And in the face of humanity's restraint, the galaxy's fear began, ever so slightly, to transform into something else, hope. Captain Robert Wilson stood on the bridge of the Defender, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. 50 alien warships approached his position, weapons hot and shields raised. They belonged to the Krell Imperium, the most militaristic faction of the Galactic Council and one of the chief architects of the attack on Earth 73 years ago. All hands to battle stations, Robert ordered, his voice calm despite the tension filling the bridge. Inform the battle group to assume defensive, formation Delta. Around the Defender, 20,000 human warships moved with practiced precision, creating a three-dimensional net that would allow overlapping fields of fire while minimizing their own vulnerability. Sir, we're being hailed. Reported communications. Officer Amy Peters. On screen. Robert replied. The main display showed a Krell commander, its metal exoskeleton gleaming under harsh lights, compound eyes unreadable. Human vessels. This is War Leader Vex of the Krell Imperium. You have encroached on sovereign Krell space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Robert's expression didn't change. War Leader, this is Captain Wilson of the Earth Fleet. We are in neutral space as defined by Galactic Council maps. We have no hostile intentions toward the Krell Imperium. Your presence here is hostility enough, the Krell replied. The human fleet threatens the balance of power that has maintained peace for millennia. A peace that didn't include us, Robert pointed out. A peace that was built on the ashes of our cities. The Krell's mandibles clicked in what intelligence reports suggested was agitation. You were judged and found wanting. The sentence was carried out. That you survived to seek revenge is merely an oversight we will now correct. Before Robert could respond, the transmission cut off. The tactical display immediately lit up as the Krell ships accelerated toward the human formation. They're powering weapons, reported Tactical Officer Greg Turner. Reading energy buildup consistent with Krell plasma cannons. Robert straightened his uniform. Hold position. Shields at maximum. Do not fire unless fired upon. The bridge crew exchanged glances. The Defender could destroy the entire Krell force without assistance from the rest of the battle group. Yet, their orders were clear. Demonstrate restraint unless directly attacked. The Krell ships fired first. Brilliant blue energy lanced across space toward the human fleet. The shots impacted against advanced shields, dissipating harmlessly in flashes of light. Shields holding at 98%, reported Greg. No damage. Return fire, Robert ordered. Targeting weapons and propulsion systems only. Minimal force. The human ships responded with precision. Beam weapons struck the Krell vessels with surgical accuracy, disabling weapons emplacements and engine arrays without breaching hull integrity. Within minutes, 47 of the 50 Krell ships drifted powerless in space, unable to fight or flee. 3 Krell vessels attempting to withdraw, Greg reported. Let them go, Robert said. They can carry word of what happened here, across the galaxy. On the human colony of New Hope, scientist Mark Evans worked in a research facility buried deep underground. He had never seen Earth, born 2 decades after the scorching, but like all humans, he carried the weight of that tragedy. Final sequence initiated, he announced to his team. Core stabilization holding at 99%. The device in the center of the laboratory pulsed with soft blue light. It wasn't much larger than a desk, yet it represented 20 years of secret research combining human innovation with reverse-engineered alien technology. If this works, said his colleague, Dr. Linda Hayes, it changes everything. Not just for us, but for everyone. Mark nodded. That's the point. The fleet bought us time. Now we need to use it wisely. The device's glow intensified as power readings climbed steadily. Many believed humanity's future depended on its massive fleet, but Mark and his team knew better. True security wouldn't come from having the biggest guns. It would come from changing the rules of the game entirely. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship Atlas, Earth's military leadership was divided. General David Gray pounded the conference table. In frustration, the Krell attacked us. We should respond with overwhelming force, show them and everyone else what happens when you fire on human ships. Admiral Helen Ross shook her head. And prove them right about us? They believe we're violent and dangerous. If we obliterate their worlds after disabling their attack force, we confirm those fears. General Gray scoffed. Their fears kept them from finishing the job 73 years ago. Their fears made them watch in silence as we built our fleet. Fear works. Until it doesn't, Helen replied calmly. Fear creates desperation. Desperate enemies are the most dangerous kind. Commander Jack Reed, who had led the initial fleet deployment from Earth, entered the conference room. We've received a priority message from Captain Wilson. The Krell situation has been contained with minimal casualties on either side. Minimal casualties? General Gray repeated incredulously. They tried to destroy our ships. And we disabled their vessels without killing their crews, Jack pointed out. Already 17 species have reached out requesting meetings. They expected us to annihilate the Krell. Our restraint is confusing them. Helen smiled slightly. Good. Confusion is better than fear. Confusion makes them think. Back at the site of the confrontation, Robert oversaw the recovery operation. Human shuttles delivered emergency supplies to the disabled Krell vessels. Oxygen, medical equipment, and power cells to maintain basic life support systems. "Sir?" Amy called from communications. "I'm picking up transmissions from the disabled Krell ships. They're talking to each other, trying to make sense of our actions." "What are they saying?" Robert asked. "They don't understand why we're helping them. Their military doctrine states that enemies should be destroyed when vulnerable." She looked up. "They think it's a trick." Robert smiled grimly. "It's not a trick. It's just not their way." Halfway across the galaxy, 3 small diplomatic vessels approached Battle Group Beta. They carried representatives from species that had once been bitter enemies of each other, now united by a common concern. Admiral Jane Foster received the delegation in the Horizons conference room. "Welcome aboard. I admit I'm surprised to see the Navarre and the Trell in the same delegation. Your peoples have been at war for centuries." The Navarre representative, a tall being with iridescent scales, bowed slightly. "Circumstances change, Admiral. The Krell have long been our protectors against Trell aggression, but the Krell are now preoccupied with humanity. We face raiders along our trade routes," added the Trell diplomat, its feathered crest rising in agitation. "Pirates who know the Krell fleet has been diverted to confront humans." Jane studied them both. "And you're coming to us for what exactly?" The third representative, from a small species called the Mikar, stepped forward. "Protection, Admiral. We seek the protection of the human fleet against those who would exploit the current chaos." In the council chamber, debates raged about how to respond to both the human fleet and the growing defections from traditional alliances. The Varaxi council leaders struggled to maintain order as accusations flew between representatives. "The Stellar Coalition has betrayed us," shouted the Krell representative. "They negotiate with humans while our ships lie crippled." "Perhaps if you hadn't attacked them unprovoked," replied the Coalition ambassador, "you wouldn't need our help now." Director Emma Cole watched the proceedings with Sam Harris and Colonel Frank Moore, observing the fracturing of alliances that had stood for centuries. "It's happening faster than we anticipated," Sam whispered. "The power balance is shifting." Emma nodded. "Fear of what we might do is being replaced by calculation of what we might offer." Frank gestured subtly toward a group of representatives from smaller species huddled in discussion. "They're forming new blocks, trying to position themselves in the new order. An order we haven't even established yet," Emma noted. As the argument in the chamber intensified, a message arrived for Emma. She read it, then showed it to her colleagues. It contained just 3 words from Mark Evans on New Hope Colony. "It works. Confirmed." Emma's expression remained neutral, but her eyes betrayed a flash of hope. She stood, silencing the chamber with the simple act. "The people of Earth have observed these proceedings with interest," she announced. "We see old alliances breaking and new ones forming. We see fear giving way to opportunity." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled representatives. "Humanity did not build its fleet for conquest or revenge, though many of you assumed we did. We built it so that we would never again be vulnerable, so that we could engage with the galaxy from a position of strength, not weakness." The Varaxi council leader tilted his head. "What are you proposing, Director Cole?" "A new foundation for galactic relations, one based not on fear or power, but on mutual security and respect." Emma's voice carried throughout the chamber. "Humanity extends an invitation to any species who wishes to discuss such arrangements." As her words echoed through the council chamber, across the galaxy, the human fleet maintained its defensive posture. 900,000 ships built for war but exercising peace, their very presence rewriting the rules of a game that had excluded humanity for too long. And in his laboratory on New Hope, Mark Evans watched his device continue to function perfectly, Dale, technology that could render the weapons of war obsolete if the galaxy was ready for such a gift. The silence of fear was breaking, replaced by the first cautious words of something new. The massive human fleet moved into position around the Galactic Council headquarters, a breathtaking display of coordination that took 14 hours to complete. 900,000 warships arranged themselves in concentric spheres there, formation not threatening but protective, a living shield surrounding the ancient space station where the fate of countless civilizations would be decided. Admiral Helen Ross stood on the bridge of the Atlas, humanity's flagship, watching as the final vessel slid into place. Her gray uniform bore the simple insignia of Earth Fleet Command, nothing more elaborate than what any other officer wore. Humans had learned long ago that true power needed no ornamentation. "Formation complete, Admiral," reported her second-in-command. "All ships report ready." Helen nodded. "Begin the broadcast." Throughout the galaxy, on every inhabited world and space station, communication systems activated simultaneously. Earth Fleet had spent decades mapping the galaxy's information networks, and now they used that knowledge to ensure everyone, from the elder species to the smallest colony, would hear humanity's message. Director Emma Cole appeared on billions of screens, her expression calm and determined. Behind her stood representatives from Earth's government, military, and scientific communities. "People of the galaxy," she began, "I speak to you today not as a conqueror, but as a survivor. 73 years ago, the Galactic Council determined that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to develop naturally. Their response was to burn our cities and slaughter billions of our people. Images of the scorching appeared. Earth's cities in flames, refugees fleeing across ruined landscapes, raw footage that humans had preserved as a reminder of what had been done to them. We were expected to fade away, a broken species clinging to a damaged world. Instead, we rebuilt. We remembered, and we prepared." The broadcast showed the human fleet surrounding the council station, the scale of it stunning even to those who had already heard rumors of its size. "Today we could do to others what was done to us. We have the power to burn worlds, to reduce civilizations to ashes. There are some among us who argued we should do exactly that." The broadcast cut to scenes from recent events, the disabled Krell ships receiving aid from human vessels, diplomatic meetings with former enemies, the council chamber where humanity had revealed the truth about Project Containment. But humanity chooses a different path. We did not build this fleet for revenge. We built it so that we would never again be victims, so that we could speak to the galaxy not from a position of weakness, but from one of strength. Inside the council chamber, representatives from 217 species waited in tense silence. Some had been humanity's persecutors, others merely bystanders, and a growing number had become recent allies. Emma stood before them in person now, having transferred from the broadcast studio to the chamber. "Humanity's terms are simple," she announced. "First, the immediate dissolution of the current Galactic Council structure, which has proven itself unworthy of its authority." Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives, but no one dared object with 900,000 human warships surrounding them. Second, the establishment of a new galactic assembly where all spacefaring species hold equal standing, including Earth. The Varaxi Council leader rose from his seat. "And if we refuse? Then each species will need to negotiate separate terms with humanity," Emma replied calmly. "Many already have. The Stellar Coalition, the Navarre Conclave, the Trell Dominion, all have signed preliminary agreements with Earth. The old order is already crumbling. We're simply offering a framework for what comes next." On the colony world of New Hope, scientist Mark Evans prepared for his journey to the council station. The device his team had created, now confirmed functional and stable, was secured in a specially designed container. "Are you sure about this?" asked Linda Hayes, his colleague. "Giving them this technology now could be premature." Mark checked. The container's seals one final time. "Director Cole believes the timing is perfect. If we're asking the galaxy to trust us, we need to show trust in return." "But this technology, it changes everything." "That's the point," Mark said with a slight smile. "The fleet got their attention. This will keep it." Throughout the next week, representatives worked tirelessly to draft the founding documents of the new Galactic Assembly. Species that had been enemies for millennia found themselves working together, united by the reality that the human fleet had fundamentally altered the balance of power. Admiral Helen Ross supervised the deployment of human defense outposts at key points throughout the galaxy. These stations, each guarded by a contingent of warships, established safe zones where smaller, vulnerable species could conduct trade without fear of piracy or aggression from stronger neighbors. The Mikar trading fleet reports safe passage through the Antares sector, an officer reported. They send their thanks. Helen nodded. For centuries, the Mikar had paid crippling protection fees to the Krell. Now they traveled under human protection, not free of charge, but at a fraction of what the Krell had demanded. And the Duran shipyards? She asked. Converting to civilian production is agreed. Our inspectors confirm 20% of their military vessels have been decommissioned. Helen allowed herself a small smile. The Duran hierarchy, once among humanity's most vicious enemies, had been the first to recognize the new reality. Their military reduction was voluntary, technically. The alternative would have been facing the human fleet with their outdated ships. On the 8th day, Mark Evans arrived at the council station with his precious cargo. He was escorted directly to the main chamber, where the final provisions of the new assembly charter were being discussed. Emma Cole greeted him with a nod, then turned to address the gathered representatives. Before we conclude these historic proceedings, humanity wishes to offer a demonstration of our commitment to the new order we are establishing together. She gestured to Mark, who stepped forward with his container. This device represents 20 years of research by Earth's top scientists, Emma explained. It combines principles we developed independently with knowledge gained from studying technology from various species. Mark opened the container, revealing a device that pulsed with soft blue light. It was surprisingly small, no larger than a desk, for something that would change the course of galactic history. This is what we call a harmonic shield generator, Mark said, activating the device. A holographic display appeared above it showing the technical specifications. When deployed in a network, these generators create an energy field that neutralizes all weapons fire within its range. The representatives murmured in disbelief. We've tested it against every weapon system known to us, including our own, Mark continued. Energy weapons, projectiles, explosives, all rendered harmless. The shield doesn't stop ships or communication, only hostile actions. The Krell representative rose from his seat. Why would you share such technology? It negates the very military advantage you've built. Emma stepped forward again. Because true security doesn't come from having the biggest fleet or the most powerful weapons. It comes from creating a system where such things are no longer necessary. She addressed the entire chamber. Humanity will begin installing these generators around Earth and our colonies. But we also offer this technology to the Galactic Assembly, to be deployed for the protection of all worlds that join our new compact. The implications were enormous. Species that had invested countless resources in military technology suddenly faced a future where those investments might be rendered obsolete. Yet at the same time, smaller civilizations that had lived in constant fear of their more powerful neighbors saw a path to true security. Over the following months, the human fleet began a gradual transformation. While maintaining its size and readiness, many vessels were converted to serve other functions: scientific exploration, disaster response, and peacekeeping. Battle Group Alpha, under Admiral Bill Thomas, established the first joint human-alien defense force incorporating ships from 12 former enemy species. Their first mission was protecting refugee convoys fleeing a stellar collapse in the Cygnus Arm. Battle Group Beta, led by Admiral Jane Foster, began the first deep space exploration mission beyond the known galaxy, inviting scientists from all member species of the new assembly to participate. And Battle Group Gamma, commanded by Captain Robert Wilson, oversaw the installation of the first network of harmonic shield generators around the assembly headquarters, symbolic protection for the new galactic order. 1 year after the human fleet had left Earth's solar system, Director Emma Cole stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Assembly. The hall, once the exclusive domain of the elder species, now hosted representatives from all spacefaring civilizations, including dozens that had never been permitted to join the old council. We began this journey seeking justice and security, she told the assembled delegates. We found that true security comes not from inspiring fear, but from building trust. Throughout the galaxy, the human fleet remained, still the largest military force ever assembled, still ready to defend Earth against any threat. But its purpose had evolved. What had been built as an instrument of potential vengeance had become a foundation for peace. The galaxy was no longer silent with fear. Instead, it spoke with many voices in the assembly hall, debating, disagreeing, but no longer dominated by the powerful few. And humanity, once nearly extinguished, had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or victims, but as architects of a new order where strength protected the weak and ancient enemies learned to become reluctant allies. 900,000 ships had launched from Earth. They had achieved their purpose without firing a shot in anger. The greatest victory humanity had discovered was not defeating an enemy, but transforming one into a friend.